Again, this is symptomatic of a much larger problem that we have looming in our region. And so I want to thank you, Judge Brown, for allowing us to be here and host this press conference. So I also want to commend Judge Brown and other justices of the peace who recognize the collateral damage of evictions and how our region cannot withstand a cascade of evictions as protections lift here in August. I'm also proud of the county and the city for coming together, urging JPs to postpone evictions until August 24th, in line with the CARES Act timeline. This is already a confusing and stressful time for people struggling to cover their basic needs. Housing is health care. Housing is a human right. This is especially true during the worst pandemic in a century, when we know social distancing saves lives. Social distancing is not possible if you have no home to go to if you're evicted. Unfortunately, we have a shortage of affordable housing in Houston, and if eviction rates go back to normal, we will even have a deeper crisis on our hands. More than 500,000 people, about 326,000 folks in the county have filed for unemployment, and I believe about 130,000 low-income jobs have been lost due to the COVID pandemic. We cannot wait. We cannot be fragmented. We have the ability to help people now. I'm here today with City of Houston Recovery Czar Marvin Odom. Thank you, Marvin, for being here. In your work, appreciate working with you to announce the creation of the Housing Stability Task Force. This task force will be compact and action-oriented, aligning community resources quickly while driving lasting changes for the region. The task force will address 3 pressing needs. The first one is preventing evictions, Judge Brown. The second one is mitigating impacts on tenants and landlords. And thirdly, stabilizing households for the benefit of public health. Evictions were a serious issue before the COVID-19 pandemic, and they will continue to be a great concern throughout the course of the economic downturn. We unfortunately anticipate a substantial increase in the volume of evictions in the weeks and months ahead, and we are determined to make our best attempt at proactive planning to reduce as many as we can. The Houston region had systemic barriers to affordable housing before COVID, and the current crisis has exposed in plain sight, ladies and gentlemen, the underlying system shortcomings. With key players at the table working together towards the same goals, we will structure our efforts to be responsive to the immediate crisis, even as we maintain a firm resolve not to lose sight of the importance of future work required to make housing stability a reality for more people. But we believe lasting improvements are possible through policy change. I'm looking forward to hearing the recommendations from the task force as we tackle a problem too large for any one court system, or service provider. Inclusive, community-driven solutions will be key. Resources are limited, so we must make sure they are allocated in a strategic way, and that's where we will rely on the deep expertise and diverse viewpoints of this task force. By acting together with speed and deliberation, we can flatten the evictions curve and increase access to affordable housing. I'm honored again to partner with City of Houston Recovery Czar Marvin Odom in this effort. He and I speak on a regular basis. The city and the county work extremely well together, and I'm so glad to be here with him to announce this task force. Mr. Odom, if you would mind joining me here and I'll say a few words in Spanish in a few minutes at the end, okay? Sorry.
Well, thank you, Representative Wally. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. And thanks, Judge Brown, for being here with us today and to allowing us to do this in your house where so much important work happens. It's an honor to be here as well. A couple of comments from me. The magnitude of the economic hardship from the pandemic is still unfolding, and it disproportionately impacts the lower income families and individuals in our community. As an example, the City of Houston's rental assistance program, while able to aid about 13,000 individual households, was fully subscribed after only 90 minutes of being made available. The need is truly massive. And to ensure we see all 360 degrees of this issue, when tenants can't pay their rents, they aren't the only ones facing financial instability. Many landlords, especially smaller owners, operate on tight margins and cannot sustain a significant drop-off in rent payments for long. They risk defaulting on mortgages, missing insurance payments, failing to pay taxes, potentially destabilizing the broader community. It is important that we pull together the relevant stakeholders to help identify near-term solutions while laying a foundation to address the long-term systemic need to build a resilient housing ecosystem. While we kick this off with great enthusiasm, seconding something that Representative Wally said, we must also keep expectations realistic, as there are simply not enough financial resources currently available, nor a sufficient supply of affordable housing stock to avoid what will still be an immense amount of struggle and difficulty for many resulting from the pandemic. But that is not a reason not to act. The creation of this task force is the first step in developing a cohesive, coordinated, community-driven solution essential to our long-term well-being and resiliency. Let me turn it back over to you, Representative Wally.
I'll say a few comments in Spanish. Mi nombre es Armando Wale, soy diputado estatal del Distrito 140. Estoy aquí con el juez Jeremy Brown y también Marvin Odom, también encargado de este trabajo en COVID-19 de parte de la ciudad de Houston y el alcalde Mayor Sylvester Turner. Una de las razones que estamos aquí es para anunciar un grupo de expertos en prevenir los desalojos aquí en la ciudad de Houston, no solamente en la ciudad de Houston, pero también en toda la región. Ya sabemos que la economía de nuestra región está muy débil junto con la crisis del COVID, y para nosotros es muy importante para prevenir los desalojos en nuestra región. Entonces, estamos formalizando un grupo de expertos en esta rama para darnos darnos pólizas, recomendaciones a la ciudad y el condado en cuestión de los desalojos, porque ya sabemos que hay mucha gente que está sufriendo, mucha gente que no tiene trabajo, mucha gente que están muy cerca, desafortunadamente muy cerca de estar en estas cortes, enfrente de estos jueces. Entonces, ahorita el gobierno federal han pusieron un alto en los desalojos hasta agosto 24, si esas propiedades están financiadas por el gobierno federal. Entonces, ya sabemos que el proceso de desalojos ya se está comenzando otra vez de nuevo. Entonces, este grupo junto con la ciudad estamos trabajando para prevenir, porque es un trabajo sumamente importante, sumamente grande, pero como dijo Marvin, no es una razón en no actuar. Entonces, estamos aquí para anunciar este grupo de expertos. Van a ser como 15 o 20 expertos en esta rama, y estamos muy atentos ahorita, muy atentos de lo que va a ocurrir en agosto cuando los desalojos van a continuar. Entonces, en cierta forma, ya están comenzando. Los otros son las propiedades que están financiadas por el gobierno federal. Entonces, we'll be glad to answer any questions, Judge Brown, Mr. Odom, but we'll open it up to questions unless I needed to clarify more in Spanish. Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Representative. I just wanted to give a special shout out to my colleague, Judge Sharon Burney, Precinct 7. In Harris County, there are 2 JPs in each precinct. We're here in Precinct 7. It's important to understand that landlords have we have concurrent jurisdiction as far as eviction cases, meaning that landlords can either file in Judge Burney's court or this court. So I just want to thank Judge Burney for being here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Judge. Welcome.
If I may ask to Judge.
Go ahead, Judge.
So how many eviction cases are you seeing throughout this weeks? Because we talked to Judge Patronella, I think his name is?
Petronella.
Petronella, and he mentioned that he's been getting cases of evictions. How many in this court are you guys receiving?
We are still accepting filings. I won't start my docket until next week, and so it was about 60 cases that we had to. Now it's important to understand that we had to cancel some dockets before the shutdown, and so a lot of the cases that the JPs are hearing now are cases where folks have missed rent in January, February, or March, right? Because we had to cancel dockets. So we had to after the Texas Supreme Court lifted the moratorium, we had to reissue citations. That means we had to give folks 10 to 21 days to actually hear a case. Under the guidance of the Office of Court Administration, we didn't really start hearings to June 1st, and so a lot of the dockets that we have now are pre-COVID.
So no new COVID cases like.
Everybody's docket is different. For in the month of June, there are no COVID-related cases that are coming through the court that I don't know. That I don't know. Again, once I hear a case, then I will understand if it's a COVID-related or not. But I start my docket next week.
So the 60 are from prior to the moratorium?
Yeah, specifically for my docket, the ones in June are the ones prior to March.
I have a question. So I think it's well understood that there are policy solutions that you guys could put in place and you're choosing not to. For instance, at the city, you guys could implement a grace period ordinance that gives renters more time before they're evicted. And with the JP judges, you guys are able to extend protections until August 24th, like the judge and the mayor have asked in a letter to all JP judges.
Mm-hmm.
So there are solutions here, and you guys are choosing not to do that. These are real protections. So can you just explain why there isn't the political will to do anything?
There is the political will there. That's why we have that's why we're convening all stakeholders. At the end of the day, with a lot of these protections, you have to understand, landlords, once a person's late on rent, they have the right not to accept the late payment of rent. And so if we push off certain dockets, we are delaying the inevitable. With the CARES Act and what the CARES Act was able to do for folks that are in Section 8 vouchers, in public housing, folks were able to recertify their monthly payment, meaning they looked at what they were making now. And in that recertification process, that's what their rent was going to be, and that backdated it. We don't have, as a JP, I can't mandate a landlord to accept rent. As a city or a county, we can't mandate a recertification of a person's rental assistance. That's why it's important to be more collaborative in the process instead of being so streamlined, instead of being so tunnel vision. If that makes sense.
Well, it sounds to me like the properties that are covered by the CARES Act funding, by the CARES Act, where it's federally subsidized housing,
right.
They do have until August 24th. So all tenants could also have that protection if JP judges wanted to extend those protections until the same time.
No, under the Texas Supreme Court, we have leeway in how we give our dockets, and we are using that leeway, taking everything in consideration, social distancing or whatnot. But I would say under the protections, because it's extended to August 24th, it's giving the federal government, the Houston Housing Authority, Harris County Housing Authority, to recertify a person's income. And so there are certain interventions and protections in place. That way those folks can stay in their homes past August 24th. If we just go ahead and be tunnel vision and do it now, there's no guarantee folks can stay in their home past August 24th. And so I think that's the point of this task force, to really be more collaborative in the process. And so, yes, those are interventions, but do they actually work beyond August 24th?
So do you not have the authority to say I'm not going to hear any evictions until August 24th? You don't have the authority to do that?
No.
Okay.
No.
And then from the city's perspective, does the city not have the
So I
authority
think
to create a grace period ordinance like you've seen in Austin, in Dallas? San Marcos created a 90-day grace period ordinance. None of these have been challenged in
Well, you've seen the request that came out of the city, and to your first question, my response would be, somebody like me comes into this role. I imagine it's similar for Representative Wally, and you take a look at what are the priorities coming out of this event that is the pandemic, and testing rises to the top, contact tracing, all the elements we can do to contain the spread of the disease, and now today this has risen up as a priority in responding to the pandemic. So that's my answer to you. We're going to get this group of people together, see what recommendations, looking at this from all sides, emerge from that, and that's where the consideration then will be to put further steps in place.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, the only thing I would add would be that, should that be a recommendation, I'm sure we would certainly, obviously, I don't have any control over city council or commissioners court. I'm not here to talk for either one of those bodies, other than to say that, should that be a recommendation, we're not ruling anything out. So that would be my question, or my response is, I don't have any authority. Commissioners court is it's its own body. City council, it's its own body. But I wouldn't want to say that it wouldn't be a recommendation, right? So your note's taken, loud and clear, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make it clear, like, there are policy solutions that you guys are choosing not to implement.
We will certainly take that into consideration, absolutely.
Lo que quiere preguntar ella en español es sobre el hecho de que la ciudad y el condado sí tienen el poder de hacer eso como está haciendo la ciudad de Austin, Dallas. La pregunta es, so I can mention the question,
Yeah.
I want to answer Francis as well. So the question is a yes or no. Is the city of Houston has the power or county to do the same thing as Austin City Council?
So just to clarify, the county government is not an ordinance-making body, right? Counties can only do what the legislature allows them to do or not do. And I'm not trying to punt to the city. It's just the reality. That's the way the system works. Unlike a home rule city that has a city council under their charter, under the government code, that's what they're charged to do is pass ordinances. But that would be the purview. Again, we don't speak for the county and the city as far as a ordinance making ability. Those are not our role. Those are not our charges, right? So to the extent that the city council, I would refer to city council on that issue. But to this point, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be a recommendation at all. What I'm saying is that that's not our charge per se.
Is it a problem though, sir, that should be addressed?
I think absolutely. I mean, I think you need to look at all. I mean, this is open-ended. If this is an issue that we need to look at, absolutely. I think we need to look at that. But to the extent that we, as recovery czars in this process, that's not our charge. Our charge is to find these solutions, and if that's a solution, then absolutely we'll look at that.
I think part of the
Go ahead.
I think part of the issue that we hadn't seen yet, and we're waiting to see, for the city of Austin, they have their right to cure, but the city of Austin, there's not a defense in JP court, right? And so I think possibly, and this is part of what the task force is looking at. It's a tangible policy, but is it making a difference, right? And so, again, if the city of Houston right now came up with an ordinance, right, a tenant wouldn't be able to use that as a defense in my court because state law only gives certain defenses that tenants can use. So in the context of that, I think part of the reason why there hadn't been any suit is because it may be ineffective, but we don't know yet because it's too early to tell.
So, Judge, if a case of eviction comes into your court right now related to COVID, what's going to be your actions? What are you going to do about it?
I think that's part of why we are bringing social service providers here. Again, HISD was already here, Council for Recovery. And so even if I have to rule on a case, and even if somebody doesn't have a defense to eviction, we have preventative and diversionary programs already in place. Harris County Community Services, the City of Houston, there are preventive, and I think part of this is making sure everybody is in sync and coordinated so we can do those things. Now, as it related to COVID, right? As it related to the CARES Act, that is a plausible defense because federal law trumps what we do in the state. So if a landlord files an eviction, but that property is covered, then I can dismiss the case. However, there's a caveat to that. The landlord would have to fill out an affidavit saying that their property is not covered by the CARES Act, right? But the landlord can fill that out and still move forward, and the tenant would have to use that as a defense. So one of the things the county is pushing is expanding legal aid services, expanding the right to counsel for tenants, because there's certain defenses that a tenant has to raise before I can rule on it. So again, looking at the broader system, how can we improve the broader system?
Who's going to be on the task force?
There's about 15 to 20 folks that we will be announcing that probably in the next week, next couple of days, but we'll have that for you. We'll make that public soon. Sooner.
It's a cross-section of...
Cross-section of folks that work in this arena, particularly housing, folks that work particularly in government on these issues, and then some of our nonprofits that do a lot of this work, from legal aid to different nonprofit organizations that actually do this type of work. And so those are the members. It'll be about 20.
And
Yeah.
how long are people going to have to wait so that they can see results on this?
No, they're being tasked to work immediately, to organize, formalize immediate. And to the extent social distancing, obviously everybody's participating in Zooms now. So it will not be, their charge is immediate.
Can you address maybe why this task force wasn't formed 2 or 3 months ago? I don't think anyone's surprised that there's an eviction problem right now.
I think that one of the things that we're trying to get a handle on is where the actual need was, because the county's so vast, right? And so if we are assessing the needs, obviously food insecurity is been at the top of the issue. At the top. Well, let me pause there. The public health crisis has always been that's always number one, right? Part of that is housing, right? As I mentioned in my talking points, if you're testing positive, if your family's testing positive, you have to, more than likely you have to isolate. You have to, 7 to 14 days. You need to be in a home, and so I think that the urgency has always been there, and that's why we're trying to get a handle of all the people that are in this arena, because the city and county, from a public health perspective, that's always been number one, and we're on those calls weekly, sometimes multiple times a day. And so one of the things that we have this is kind of boiled up is the housing. And we've been talking about this. We've been collaborating from the city and the county perspective to transition now to this, immediate crisis of the housing, because August is coming, right? Even with the moratorium, it's not going to stop Judge Brown from hearing these cases, right? So it's immediate, and I agree with you. We need to do this immediately, and that's why the work is going to be immediate.
So Judge, in order for you to not hear these cases, you need an order from the Supreme Court of Texas, right?
Correct.
The moratorium ended May 18th.
And we had
yeah.
we had a moratorium, right? Beginning in, I want to say mid-March, March 16th to May 18th. Another piece to the puzzle is if a landlord or tenant doesn't like our rulings, then they can appeal the case to the county court at law. There are 4 county court at law judges who are actually hearing cases right now. So again, these interventions in place, that's why it's important that we have interventions already in place before we get in the courthouse. That's why it's important that individual JPs don't go rogue, just because at the end of the day, the landlords themselves unfortunately have other levels of protection, the county court at law judge, right? That may not will understand a right to cure, but again, since those are plausible defenses in our courthouse, then quite frankly, folks will be stuck.
Judge, how would you assess the complexity of housing laws here in Texas? Because as you explain this, I just see this big web that it seems impossible for tenants to even know what their rights are if they're not protected under these. So
Absolutely right. Our legislative writes the laws. And something that Representative Wiley said, that the basic necessity for housing. But we can say that, but if we're really serious about that, we have to put our money where our mouth is. Case in point, Gideon versus Wainwright made it a protection that you have a right to counsel in a criminal case, and that the local government has to fund that right to counsel. There's a growing movement across the country, New York, in California, and other jurisdictions, where that same right to counsel should extend for basic human needs: food, shelter, housing. Right now, in our family courts, right, there are certain protections and right to counsel. But if we're serious about this being a basic need, right, this is why we need local dollars to fund legal aid services, because this is a complex system. If my car breaks down right now, I have no idea what to do, because it's a system I'm unfamiliar with. So I have to call a mechanic. That similar type of complexity of a car is a complex in our legal system. So folks, in the chaos of an eviction, need someone to help them navigate that process. I'm glad the Commissioners Court put it on the agenda on Tuesday. Hopefully, they'll put funding on it June 30th meeting. And I hope you all will be there. It's at 10 o'clock.
So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there are obviously some intermediate changes that can be made in the legislature to, ease the process for tenants. But as the judge mentioned, you have Commissioners Court that has put this item on the agenda. I think Commissioner Ellis put it on the agenda as far as, and I'm going to read it verbatim, request by Commissioner of Precinct 1 for discussion and possible action to address evictions of renters in Harris County, and for possible action that may include studying the feasibility of a pilot program to support the right to legal counsel of indigent renters, as well as other forms of advocacy and education for renters and individuals at risk of losing their shelter. Again, this was something that was debated just Tuesday. And so, look, there are also some dollars that will be coming down from HUD. And so you have to look at those dollars. Both the city and the county have ability. I think nearly $30 million in funding was allocated to the Houston and Harris County Tuesday to be used for certain bullet items. Make more emergency shelters available for homeless and individuals and families. Operate emergency shelters for providing food, rent, security, maintenance, repair, fuel. I'm reading from the document. Provide hotel, motel vouchers for homeless families and individuals. It also could provide essential services to people experiencing homelessness, including children, education services, employment assistance, outpatient health services, and legal services. And so, absolutely. And that's what the task force is going to be looking at, is how to obviously coordinate, leverage these federal dollars and whatever local dollars that we can do to help folks. Again, with the city and the county combined, $45 million in rental assistance. The cities obviously went much quicker. The counties, $30 million are being distributed through the Greater Houston Community Foundation, and those dollars will be hitting households pretty soon. Look, the job is vast. The job is huge. But as Marvin mentioned, great quote. Just because it's a huge problem doesn't mean we should not be acting. And to your point, absolutely, it's immediate. It's a huge problem. And we need to get a handle of it. So, any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate you coming.
All right. Thank you, sir.